For the first time ever, I am thrilled to say we have an official sponsor for the Dirt Talk podcast, and that's Ariat. I've worn Ariat boots on every job site I've visited over the years, traveling in them across 5 continents. More importantly, I have yet to find a single project where working folks, unlike me, are not wearing Ariat boots and workwear in every condition imaginable. And there's really good reason for that, and that's because it's phenomenal stuff. And the more I've learned about Ariat and the company, the more I've loved their brand. So with this, Ariat is offering any Dirt Talk listener 10% off their next Ariat order at ariat.com/dirttalk. That's 10% off boots, jeans, and workwear at ariat.com/dirttalk or at the link in this episode's description. With that, let's get to the show. Materials is where the money's at. Based on my anecdotal research, the materials companies make a lot more money than the construction companies.
Yeah. I'm starting to see that. When I was using it myself, I was like, you don't see it because you're not charging yourself. That's just kind of a gain for the company. But it's crazy how, like I said, our first month billing, I was just like, oh my gosh, this place can actually make money. The hobby's coming out of it.
It was pretty. How did you buy that to begin with?
I tried buying that thing in like 2013. It's just I was starting a dirt company, ramping that up, and I just always wanted like a gravel pit, and so I was working with the old man and just kept going back and forth with him, and he was a tough old man and thought it was worth like way more than it was, and so the permits were all dug out, and so I worked with him to get the permits. The boundaries expanded so that all the material was, and then no one knew about the permits. And so finally in 2020, we finally closed on it. And so it was a 7-year negotiation.
It was, I went out there not long after you bought it.
Yeah.
I mean, it was in rough shape, I guess, from like a production standpoint.
Yeah, there was nothing there. It was a shop that was full of stuff from the 70s.
Yeah, and like a bunch of spiders.
Yeah. There wasn't any running equipment out there. I think there's old 988B loader that we're trying to send to Ritchie Brothers and get rid of. But yeah, she was rough.
There wasn't anything going on.
No, nothing. It was, and it sat empty for 10 years before I got it. So it was.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So did you have to bring all the equipment in initially to even crush anything there?
Yeah. Yep.
That was all your stuff?
Yep. So it was all my mobile stuff that we were starting to try to make it all work.
Nice.
So it was an adventure. I did like mobile stuff and recycling concrete to owning a pizza. A lot of trial and errors, and
I like there's a lot of money to be made in materials, but there's no easy button to it at the same time.
No,
there's a reason why it's all big boys now, because it just requires a lot of capital and time.
Huge capital. That's one thing that because luckily I've been over 4 years just kind of buying stuff as I go, paying for it. So I'm not in debt on it, but it's been definitely, but the capital intensive, but once you get there, everything's paid off, then it's, just wear and tear and, your maintenance costs that are kind of there. So
it becomes somewhat fixed. Once you get to a certain point,
you can definitely calculate your labor and like I've always thought of like setting that place up so it takes 2 people to run the plant and then 1 person to do the scale, and 3-person operation is.
And you blasted out there this summer?
Yeah, we I think it was March. We did a big blast because everyone said on that pit, it's impossible to blast out there. You can't blast that pit. It's, there's no way to physically do it. And even, the blasting guys I've had a relationship with for 10 years working on job sites, they were even skeptical. I mean, I had to have them out about 6 or 7 times, like, hey, this is what we want to do. And he's like, no, I don't want to do this.
Is it because the high wall's so big?
The high wall and then the highway's right there.
Oh, yeah. You don't want to shoot rocks right in. That's right.
Because they all wanted to start up on the top and work your way down. But I had a big knob that every time you push stuff off, it would, bounce wherever. And so with M-Shaw and everything, we had to take the nasty one and do some big, we did 80-foot holes on our first bench instead of doing like the 40s, what you're supposed to. And so, and then took a 600 and, spent a month making just a 60-70 foot berm. And, that the night before the blast, I was sweaty. It just caught it all from hitting the road. But it was, the blaster, he's like, I've been blasting for like 32 years, man. And I don't get the sweats. And this one, I just This has got me on my chair. I was lowering the emulsion truck down with a dozer. We're dangling on the side of a hill, with a giant emulsion truck, so we could fill the holes with all the powder. But yeah, it was pretty wild.
But then once you start, I mean, the top is in theory the most difficult part, because then you can start working your way down.
Yeah, the guys that ran that pit before were just going after the easy rock, and so they left, a wall of overburden to the ledge. When I bought it, there was a picture of a 700. He was working like literally, 5 feet off of a 400-foot ledge up top, and a big boulder came down and whacked that 700, just tinfoiled the arm. But yeah, it was a tough pit, especially for me not having a background in it either. It's been a learning process.
Huh. That's pretty cool. No, that's good. That's working out, because I know that's where I would start a gravel pit tomorrow over a construction company.
100%.
But it's just so hard to do that because the buried entry is so high.
Yep.
Because you got to find either an old man that's kind of the only way, or try to go get a new permit on something, but good luck, especially in a state like Washington.
Yeah, it's almost impossible. Even to just get a permanent expansion right now, they're saying 10 years for, to go anything like that. So it's...
Yeah. And so then only the big companies have that kind of money to just wait, because all it is just money.
Yep.
You just, okay, I'm going to go spend money now, but not get a return even to begin with 10 years from now. You can't, a small business owner can't do that.
No, gosh, no. And it, a lot of people ask me, how do I do it? And I'm just like, hey, I looked at it when I started this thing as, hey, I got a shop, I got a yard for my construction gear, do some recycling, do some other stuff here, but not okay, I'm going to be full production to make this thing viable, because, there's so many unknowns in there. And so it was, just going in as kind of a shop, storage yard, and then, slowly making it a pit out of it back again.
So is that so that's your home base now too?
Yeah.
That's where everything's at?
Yeah.
Construction too?
Yeah. On the other side of the road, we have 7 acres over there, and that's where we keep all our, our gear for the construction side, or, our Connexes and stuff like that over there.
The property you were on before, did you own that?
No, I leased that.
Oh, okay. So you just got rid of that.
Yeah. They raised my rent pretty high. And so I finally just you remember that place. I mean, it was not the Taj Mahal.
No, by no means. But it seemed like a good location.
Oh, it was a great location.
Yeah.
But it was, the location was great. It was just a competitor as crushing concrete down there, and, taking brush, and just that was covering the lease on that place. But then all of a sudden they wanted to raise it up considerably. And so it was,
Yeah.
Just I owned that out there and said, hey, let's just move the yard out there. And it's been, then we had an office back when I had Rhino. We had the office separate just for the same kind of location in Maple Valley, but then we just had the whole yard and everything out in Enumclaw.
Are you from that area originally? Where are you from?
Yeah, I went to school in Maple Valley. So
oh wow.
Yeah,
so you're really from there then.
Yep.
How far is Maple Valley from Seattle, downtown?
45 minutes without traffic, 30, 45 minutes.
So it's not that far.
No.
But it is far.
Yeah. And then traffic, it could be 2 hours.
It's hard to drive around there. Yeah. I remember, man, there was one day, so I was working up in Mount Vernon. Oh, so pretty far north. And I had to go, I'm so it's a Friday, and it's 10 a.m. And I'm up in Mount Vernon, and I'm in my head, my girlfriend at the time had just flown into Seattle, and we were going to spend the weekend together. And I, in my mind, had, okay, so I'm going to get my work done in the morning, and I'm going to get off, and I'm going to drive back down to Seattle a little early, because it's the difference between an hour and 15 minutes and 2.5 hours.
Yep.
And something broke or something like that on a drill, and they needed somebody to pick up a pump. And I was the fucking guy, the only guy. And I remember being so annoyed, because I had at midday, early afternoon, probably. I think this was early afternoon, to drive down through Seattle, and it was south of town. So I had to go from Mount Vernon through Seattle, south of town, sit on the 99 when the viaduct is still there, and just I'm looking out over Seattle, Pike's Place. I'm like, I should be there right now with my girlfriend, but I don't even have this damn pump yet.
Yeah.
And then grab the pump and then go back through Seattle and then go back up to Mount Vernon and then come back to Seattle because I was staying in Seattle. And I was so salty about it because it was like 6 hours of sitting in traffic. It was just the worst afternoon. That whole area is just, it's out of control.
It's just getting worse,
Yeah.
They're doing some freeway projects, but during COVID, it actually was nice, but we're starting to get back to COVID level or pre-COVID traffic, levels again. So
yeah, during COVID was awesome.
It was. You could get anywhere fast, and it was
flying in 2020 was the coolest thing in the world, other than the mask thing. But it was incredible, and now it's just an absolute zoo everywhere I go.
Oh yeah.
So you grew up there. Then you were in logging for a while.
Yeah, well, that
early on, weren't you?
That's how I started my company. Was the PAMP, we called it, Rino. It was I worked for a guy, and I never finished high school, and it was just kind of a young whippersnapper, and started laboring for him. I was emancipated from my parents. I was living kind of on his couch at the same time, and so it was. I was working, 60, 70 hours a week for $15 an hour, as happy as could be. And
how old were you? 15, 16?
Yeah, I was probably 17, 18 at that point. It was, and so it was kind of my first job. Never, ran equipment, or I used to wash dump trucks like when I was younger at 16, but then, went in there just laboring and kind of just ended up, moving up so fast, just learning, and then he stuck me on equipment, and then it was, pretty much running his company and working with all his clients. And
it was logging or land clearing?
He was more doing, logging's just been a passion of mine. So that was kind of just the left-hand field of, I just, on the side, I would go do these little jobs. I'd go do logging jobs and land clearing jobs, and used to climb trees, and on the weekends when I wasn't working for him. And so then it was, it got to a point where I was working. He was going to put me at salary, and I, 07, I think is when this happened, right before the big crash. And, when you're working all these hours, and I was like, I can't go salary for that. You want me to do the same level. And so I thought,
it's a pay cut.
Yeah. And so I was out hunting, up in the middle of the woods, and saw an old excavator up there. And so I went and worked a deal with this old timer up there. And, right in 07, thought I was going to go take on the world. And then, the bottom fell out of it. But
so perfectly wrong timing.
Perfectly, you couldn't have planned that any worse. Like, it was just like, I went and spent like my whole savings account to go buy this excavator, and just, ready to go take the world over, and then just flop.
Was it a nice machine or not?
No, gosh, no. It was a logger special. It was the old 200 Hitachi, I think, like a -5.
No paint on the counterweight.
It had a cab riser, and the corks, rub the mats and all the paint off the catwalks and everything. Like, she was a logger special, I learned to be a mechanic very well on that machine.
Yeah. So you end up with this machine, market falls out underneath you. Then what do you do?
Luckily, I had a couple logging contracts just with some private guys at that time. Never logged a day in my life. I just, go work, knew some people, had some land, and did some percentage splits, and went and, got through those contracts, and then kind of was starting to make went out and bought some other machines, some skidders, and was picking up pretty good on the logging side of things. And then a guy reached out for me in New Mexico that they had a post and pole mill down there, and they kept trying to get me to go down there. And I kept, hey, I'm young and bit. I think I was 19 at the time or something, like when this all started going on. And they wanted me to go down there logging because they couldn't find anyone logging. I'm like, there ain't no logs in New Mexico. Like, if you think New Mexico is not the timber capital of the world, And so finally he convinces me to fly down there and go look at it. And so I go look at it, and I'm like, okay, there's a lot of timber down here. Like, this could be fun. But it was a whole different style of logging, like Washington's big wood, a lot of saws and log loaders,
much
skidders,
smaller trees.
Yeah, down there. Yeah. And that's what the problem was, is they had 3 sides logging for them down there, and they were using like giant bunchers, giant skidders, and big processors. And, just from what I learned, YouTube and watching videos, it's like, okay, you want to do like a small diameter system, like harvesters and a forwarder. Never ran one in my life, and it, ended up just going buying a forwarder and a harvester and moving across the country down there to go logging.
Damn. Yeah, it's amazing. It's kind of the same thing, but the equipment in the Southeast logging versus the Pacific Northwest,
night and day,
completely different.
Yeah,
completely different. Yeah, just the economics are different too. So like the amount of money they can spend on equipment, Pacific Northwest, you'd be bankrupt day one if you tried to do that in the Southeast.
Oh yeah, and now they're tethering off hillsides with bunchers, and
it's so cool to see.
Yeah,
it's just the equipment up there is incredible. The tethering stuff.
Yeah,
that's the real deal.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
it's impressive. They've
got their feet on the front Lexan, rappelling down a cliff with a steel cable.
Yeah, I was driving down the road and I look up and I'm like, oh my god, that's a buncher coming down that hill. You know? And it's just kind of funny that how far it's came in like a short amount of time. You would have never thought of doing that, 10, 15 years even.
No, well, and the winches now too, they can just run themselves. So you've got a winch up the hill, but then you're running it from your machine. You don't even need the second guy anymore.
Yeah, it's just. And then they're going all to the tong throwers with the saws and the grapples. So, you're cutting and throwing your way right down the bottom of the hill. So you're, it's one-man band. You don't need towers. And there's still tower ground. But
we went out to see Kirkpatrick last summer in Oregon outside of Eugene. Yeah, just to see this buncher just grab the trees and then just chuck them down the hill.
Yep.
And you're looking at that and it doesn't look that big when you're looking from ways away, but then you walk up to the tree, you're like, these are big trees that it's just flinging down this hillside. It's just wild. So you do the logging thing basically as just like to survive. It's the opportunity in front of you.
Yeah, well, we went down there and like I said, I've never, that small wood, I never knew nothing about it. And so I just kind of penciled it out, did a ton of research and, figured out how to make it all work. And then went down there and started, we were producing in the work ethics of Washington versus New Mexico. It's just kind of New Mexico. It's kind of like no hurry. Like and so I took, some young guys down with me from Washington and, we were with this 3-4 man crews that they were running down there. They were running 2 loads a day. And, we go down there with 2 machines and we're running 8 to 10 loads a day. And then so we got to a point where all our, our log deck, we're starting to cut roads that they never even thought was possible to get to new wood because we're using all the Washington techniques to, log down there in New Mexico they never thought of. And, but we got to a point where they just ran out of, like they couldn't truck the wood out fast enough. I'm like, hey, we got hundreds and hundreds of tons sitting all through these woods because I got paid by the ton down there. And so if it sits out there in that 100-degree heat, it was just losing value. So we ended up going from there up to Colorado, Minturn Vale area, logging the beetle kill.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was a whole different, as you say, from the south to the west, the differences there. It was, we were cutting like 65, 70 foot logs, putting them on, log trucks with sleepers on them. It was from cutting an 8-foot log to going to cutting just massive long logs and, piling as high as you could on the truck.
So when you say beetles, they've had like all through Colorado, Montana, Idaho, these pine beetles.
Yep.
Where are they from?
Are they
an invasive species? They must be.
I'm pretty sure. I could have told you back in 2010 because I was all about learning and stuff on that, but it was I've lost, forgot a lot of stuff from.
But these beetles, they'll wreck entire forests.
Oh yeah, they called it Minturn's right by Aspen and stuff, and they were calling them the brown forest. We were going in there where you lit a match, you're knocking the whole national forest out.
Yeah, so that's the problem is you have to go and grab it all because it's all this dead brush and fuel for them. If lightning strike happens, the whole place goes up.
Yeah, and it was like the hard part about it too is the Forest Service is actually paying to go in and log in this because they stopped all logging back in the day out there, and so all the mills shut down, and so where we were taking the wood from that site out of Minturn, I think it was 12 hours one way up to Wyoming somewhere. Wow. And then. But you think of the trucking costs and your logging costs, it was all getting subsidized by the government.
Sure.
Or, they could have made money off it if there was mills around there.
Yeah. That's one of the major problems of California.
Yeah.
They've just killed the forestry industry. And then when you kill the forestry industry, now you don't have mills. And so then now you have all these trees just sitting there now. And then they've had all these fires for
Yep.
the past decade that have just wreaked havoc because they've killed the logging industry.
It's crazy. Even in Washington, Idaho, Oregon right now, like I follow the auctions up there. Murphy's is a big one, and that's kind of the indicator how stuff. But in probably the last year, I've seen probably 6 or 7 mills just shut down, like pulp mills, paper mills.
Wow.
And it's just, killing the industry of not being able to do anything with the wood.
Yeah.
And it's just going to keep getting worse.
Yeah. And that's what's interesting too about logging is it's really controlled by the mills.
Yep.
Everything's dictated by the mills.
Yep.
The trees aren't worth anything unless you can turn them into something. And the mills are so consolidated. It's just a few companies running for the big ones, like paper especially.
Oh, yeah. That was like when COVID hit, wood prices to build houses just went through the roof.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, oh, the loggers are getting rich. It wasn't the loggers getting rich. The loggers, the wood price didn't go up. If anything, it probably went down a little bit. But
no, a friend of mine who logs in the Southeast, he said there was one mill. I forget what it was exactly, but he was like, this mill just made more money this quarter than they did in the past decade.
Yep.
And because that's what I thought. I called him. I'm like, you guys must be making a killing right now. He's like, the price of wood has not changed a dime.
Yep.
Which is insane how that can happen. Yeah.
It was, but yeah, it was a bummer to see that because just that equipment, like you're saying, the cost of it now is just so huge to like get in there, the capital on it.
Yeah.
And you got to run 20 loads to make it worthwhile. You're really busting to get going.
The risk is no joke.
Yeah.
So then how do you end up back in Washington?
So after that Colorado contract, we logged that one out there. And then we went into Oregon, Estacada area, and we took that, got rid of the forwarder then, and we just had the my harvester, doing the small wood. And so then we're working for a logging outfit down there, just doing thinnings and, I was just doing the cutting for him at that point. And so we stayed down there till 2010-ish is kind of when, I started seeing things heat back up, up in Washington. And that's where I kind of went back up.
Okay. So you kind of just waited out the storm.
Yeah. I mean, logging's tough. Like anyone that's logged never.
It wasn't a vacation. Yeah.
No, you're sitting up there in your trailer load. I mean, I remember loading logs out the Mount Hood Forest up there that, you'd wake up at 2 a.m, get out of your trailer, go load a couple loads of logs so they could hit Longview by, the time they open, hopefully get back up for another load. And then you work all day, and it was just, it's a young man's sport, but it's a lifestyle. It's not a job. It's not a 9-to-5 job. It's a,
you live out on the tract?
Yeah. Well, because where we were working up there in the Mount Hood National Forest, I mean, we were almost 2.5, 3 hours up into the up in the woods up there. So I would just take my camper up there and, live up in the, up on the landing up there. Because there was no way to by the time you're loading logs and that early out in the morning, I mean, you go home for an hour and turn right back around and spend 6-7 hours a day driving.
So it really was a lifestyle.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And it burns your guy out pretty fast. Your love life doesn't help that at all.
No, nor does starting a business in general.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
It hasn't helped mine, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. It has not helped mine. So then things are heating up back in Washington from a logging standpoint. And when do you jump into construction?
The construction, I was getting lots of calls for, people to, come back up and start doing dirt work. And, because at this point, we had a dozer and a couple pieces of dirt equipment, but it was mostly focused on logging. And so I started selling the logging gear and went back into just doing like house cuts and just little simple stuff and kind of just, relocating back up to Washington.
How old are you?
Gosh, and I'm going to say I was probably, 2010. I was probably 22-ish, 23.
Damn.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I tell the story where people, when we were logging Colorado, we were up there at 15,000 feet and people still don't believe it. I'm like, yeah, I didn't have no one's ever funded me. It's always just go out and work and make the money. And so we just had tents, and even some of my buddies I still know, we go back and laugh about it. It would be 70 degrees in the day, and then we'd wake up with 6-8 inches of snow on the tent, collapsed in, getting up to go to work again. And it's just
but that's the kind of stuff that you in a way should do when you're that young.
Oh yeah.
because you don't know any better. You've got nothing else better to do. And the risk is almost non-existent at that point.
You don't have a family. I mean, I had a dog and, it's what'd you have to lose?
Yeah.
Like it's different now, but it's
Yeah. It gets different, but it's like when I see people, it's like one of the biggest things that bums me out is when they're like 20 years old trying to like manage the risk and balance in their life. Like, stop. Just stop. What are you doing? Like, you don't have any risk. What are you worried about?
If you fail, there's nothing like, wow, start over again.
Yeah.
There's zero risk. You don't usually have a house by that point. You have nothing like.
No.
It's
no. So then, but then you had the first construction company.
Yeah, that was PAMF. PAMF is Rhino, but as you've laughed many times over that one. It's hard to market PAMF,
Yes.
So that's where we did a DBA off of that to Rino Construction, and then then it had to be special, forget the H and just RINO. So it was, everyone's always made fun of me for my name choices.
Yeah, but and then Rhino grew pretty substantially.
Yeah, we grew fast. It it was back to the young mentality of like, I got nothing to fail. Like, what am I going to lose? Like,
sure.
If it's I think in 2013, 14, I mean, it was fueling me, like, cause the logging taught you like your work ethic and just, you gotta work or you're not paying the bills. And so I kind of had that work ethic. And then I just took that into the dirt world of, hey, we're going to blow this job out. How can we, be bunch of cowboys pretty much. And how do we get back in the industry and take off and go?
Were you union, non-union?
Non-union.
You're non-union?
Yep.
Is that, that's tricky to navigate.
Especially up there. The unions are very strong up in Seattle area.
Yeah. Was that problematic for you?
Yeah. When I started growing they got, I pissed everyone off, because
once you get big enough.
Yeah. And I was just some young kid, of like, I still laugh at, like, I don't even know if I had a beard by then, like hair wasn't growing on my face. And,
I still don't.
Yeah. But I got, all the big companies, we were doing a bunch of those big holes in Bellevue and Seattle, and all these big union companies, started some of the union after me and, filing against the NR or the National Labor Relations Board. And, and that is not a fun navigate. I think, I spent $400,000 or $500,000 just fighting that. Cause the unions would go and say, hey, you did this, or you tried, like, just make something up. And it got so bad. Like they would sit outside my job site, sit outside my house. Like it was almost like the old time stuff you hear. Like it was, it's pretty wild.
It's pretty wild. And like union or other stuff, I think people don't understand that aren't in business like this is you can be right. They can be wrong.
Yeah.
But it can still cost you a ton of money.
Yeah.
To get to a point where you can even prove that. Like they can just bind stuff up. It's now there's a term lawfare.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. Just using the legal system to.
Oh, I had the one of the best labor lawyers in the country. Like he was top 3 in the entire country, and still friends with the guy, a great guy. But it was, he felt bad where he just like, these guys are just screwing you so bad. He just started taking it, like helping me out without charging me. Cause he's like, you're going to just, you either get to quit or keep fighting.
Yeah.
And it finally got to the point where we won against them. But it was how I explain it in that state is, it was like, I could have a video of them, shooting someone, say, look, that guy just shot that. And, the National Labor Relations Board would kind of look the other way. Mm-hmm. And then they would go, oh, I heard from my third cousin of this, that he did something, and that you're fighting every allegation. Like you look at them wrong, and you're like, there's nothing wrong with the union. And if they probably didn't come after me, I probably would have went union.
And they're quite strong up there for good reason.
Yeah.
Like they run a really nice ship.
Yeah.
Like when we were Kiewit, everybody's union. The guys were great.
Yeah.
They're great operators.
And, like I said, I have nothing wrong with the unit. It was just, it puts a bad taste in your mouth when you start getting attacked like that instead of just coming in like, hey, you want to go union? No, if we're going to attack you because you're taking the union word kind of a thing.
Yeah. Had you even considered it?
I feel
like you just started growing and trying to build work and.
when we started growing again, it was just, my good old buddies out of high school, we were figuring out as we go, lots of trial and error, but we knew how to do pipe. We knew how to move dirt, and, we had lots of energy. And so it was, we weren't even really like, it was back in the time too, coming still about a 07, 08 kind of where, that work wasn't prevalent up there still. And so that like you could find labor pretty easy. And even when Rhino started growing pretty big, I had an old employee I ran into at a store here probably a week ago that said, hey, you changed the labor market up in Washington. You would pay people, you brought the whole non-union market up about $10 an hour because, I was all about, I'm never been about like, screwing the employee. I want to do what's, you take care of me, I take care of you kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So it's just a tough navigation there.
But was there ever plans to grow? But it was just...
No, I was just having fun,
building stuff.
Well, I started growing, and like I remember signing like the first couple $1 million with Komatsu. I'm just like 21 or 22 at this point, sitting down with the salesman, and I'm like, just the same theory, like didn't own a house, wasn't scared of nothing in life, and here we go, let's sign the paperwork, and off we go. And then you start getting these payments coming in, and it's that's where I really learned in life that being uncomfortable will help someone grow any day of the week. Like it's when I, got everything paid off, then that's where it's like you start getting comfortable, you get bored, but you're uncomfortable, that just uneasy feeling like I owe, $5 million over here. How do we go get the next job and keep going? Yeah.
Well, and I at least I didn't appreciate like how much $1 million was.
Yeah.
And then until you get into a situation like that and start to really understand, oh, whoa, that's how much $1 million is. That's a lot. That's 1,000. That's a lot of money.
Yeah. And people think, oh, you just did $1 million job. You made $1 million bucks. And it's like, no, my profit is, 5% on this. So, I gotta go.
Yeah. And fuel just went up. So,
yeah. It went to 3%,
Yeah. And then retention and
then you get paid 2 years later down the line. Yeah. If the company's still around, then to pay you. It's great.
The work you guys were doing, was almost all like commercial, residential.
Yeah, we did a lot of the holes. When the union attacked me, or I wouldn't say attacked, but when they started coming after us pretty hard, we started getting away from doing the deeper holes, and then that
you did some pretty big ones.
Oh yeah, like we were doing 60-foot deep holes. And I had some teams that did some holes and stuff before, and it was. It was pretty impressive, and loved the work. And, we still do holes here and there, but it's not like, we're not set up with conveyors and like these other guys are now. So it's tough to compete.
It's pretty sophisticated. I feel like in Seattle.
Yeah.
Like the deep excavation guys, they're no joke.
Yeah. They're good at it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's incredible. Yeah.
You can't, it's unless you do that, all day and every day doing holes, like it's so hard to get geared up and get your guys in that mindset.
Yeah. How big did Rhino get? How many guys did you have?
I was 167 guys at one point.
That's pretty damn good size operation.
It was tough. Like it was mentally tough. I mean, we've had our talks over the years about how tough it was. But.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I cannot relate to running a company like that, but I can relate to like being in your 20s and trying to, I think that's what's been difficult for me is like in your 20s, you're still developing as a human and you're still figuring out like, who am I?
Yep.
What do I want? What am I good at? What am I bad at? How did my parents fuck me up? Like you're just trying to you're just trying to sort through all of that. But then you start to have this increasing sense of responsibility.
Yep.
That's so unnatural. That is this business that's growing and more people and families and other businesses depending on you.
Yep.
But you're still a kid.
That's
it's hard.
100%, because you look at it, it's not like, oh, I got 50 people to work for me. You got 50 families to work for you. Like if you don't make payroll, you aren't screwing one person for not making the payroll. It's you're screwing the whole families, and it's a bad deal.
And all the vendors, all your customers. There's just so many people depending on this thing that you, at the end of the day, in a way, that rests on your shoulders.
Yep.
It doesn't entirely, but at the end of the day, it does.
And you would never get like when you're like, oh, I'm going to start a business. You would never like, oh, I got this feeling that I'm going to take on. Like that's not part of your business plan. It's just you get it one day and you're like, oh, this is a heavy burden to carry. I
think especially in construction, because there is in a sense a low barrier to entry. Like anybody can kind of become a contractor.
Yep.
In the grand scheme of things. Everybody thinks it's going to get, but they're lied to because it's not really that way. And I think if you're small, like you are now,
yep,
I think like that's one of the best places to be
for
a lot of people. Well, one, working at a great company is a really good gig.
Yep.
A really, really good gig. It gives you a lot more balance than you could get out of owning a company.
Yeah.
But if you really want to own a company, like those smaller companies that you can keep your arms around, there's a lot to that, and you make good money. You make really good money, but then you start to exceed that. And I when I've talked to guys, I'm just like, just really think about it. I've met so many people that they exceed that, but they get into something that they did not sign up for.
Yep.
And that can, in a lot of ways, just completely consume you and completely crush you. And you get into it because you love it. You love digging holes. You love moving dirt. And then all of a sudden, it's just this monster ready
you start
to
feeding
eat
the beast. You know, you start with one job and it's like, oh, I got to go take this job, and then you take another job, and then like that was my problem. Like I grew Rhino so fast that like I look back at it now as I would work for anyone that had a heartbeat. You know, like I got to feed this thing. I keep these guys busy. I have these families to keep busy, and you know, instead of being more selective about my clientele, like then it was, you know, you're going to a lot of attorney fees are coming with it because they aren't paying their bills or they're trying to screw you out. And there's a lot of other things instead of just say, hey, I'm working with these good clients. Let's keep, you know, a good pace going. It gets a very uneasy feeling when you start growing like that.
Yeah. And then you get to 2020.
Yeah.
So were you that about as big as it got going into 2020?
Yeah. Right when COVID hit, it was kind of like because I remember being down at Con Expo.
Yeah.
With, you know, my team at that time and, you know, trying to navigate COVID from Con Expo. And then that was about the peak of it right there.
Yeah, you guys were humming.
Yeah.
I had visited you probably not too much before that.
Yep.
And then Washington gets slammed harder than almost anywhere else in the United States, probably.
Yeah, some of the toughest restrictions.
Yeah, it was even worse than California.
Yep.
And then you were square in the middle of that.
Yeah, you know, you're trying to keep the projects going. They're, you know, what's important project, what's not. Like it was just a whole mess. And then, you know, you'd get like, you'd be able to work some projects, and then all your competitors would be calling you in to the government. And so then you know, you got everyone coming after you. I mean, I've had a like, you know, dim outlook on the construction industry in Washington, but like everyone talks about it. Like I've worked a lot of other places in the country, and everyone's there, like, you know, going to your round tables and stuff. People are there to help you, want to see you succeed, and like, hey, you're taking this risk. How do we, you know? We're here for you. And Washington's one, like they see your head next to the puddle, they're going to, you know, put the foot on your head, and they'd rather see you fail than, you know. And I've never had that mentality where like, I even to the day, like I'll help my competitors. I don't care, you know. It's like, you can't expect to get every single job you bid. Like it's like you win some, you lose some.
Yeah.
I found ways to get competitive. They found ways, you know, and so it's just a different market up there.
Well, and Washington, from a restriction standpoint, was one of the only states, I think, that said construction was not essential.
Yeah. Yep. The governor just said, yeah,
which is wild, which is completely insane. Pennsylvania shut it down for a little bit, but then even they were like, all right, this is too wild. But Washington was shut down for a while. And
the problem is like we had some huge dirt projects open, and the erosion. You know how wet Washington is. Like, you know, we get 70 to 100 inches of rain, and so you can't go out to these projects, and you know,
just washing.
There's no control on it, but you know, you got a big nightmare to deal with.
Yeah. And so you tried to manage that the best you could. 2020, 2021. I feel like I came up there at some point.
Yeah,
Rhino's still humming.
Yep.
Checked out some site work projects, so on and so forth.
Yep. That's kind of when I first got the pit, because
Yes. Yeah. Right when you first got the
I
pit.
closed on the pit literally like the next day they put this mandate in of like that, no work in Washington. You're like, oh great, I just spent a couple $1,000,000.
Yeah.
This is a great feeling. And it was scary. Like it was kind of like heart kind of fell out like, oh, what do you do?
Yeah. It must have been, maybe it was even 2021.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it was that restrictive, but I do remember running. My friend has his family has a place in Queen Anne that I stayed at, and Queen Anne's Queen Anne. You know, it's upscale. Yeah. And I remember running, and people were looking at me like I was about to kill their kids because I didn't have a mask on.
Yep.
And it's just a different world because you go, I'd been traveling nonstop since May 2020, and that was the first time I realized like these people have not left this neighborhood in over a year. Like this is it. This is their reality. This neighborhood and the TV in their living room. That's all they're like. They don't know what's going on outside of this place.
Oh yeah.
And to me, it was very eye opening because it was like, I can totally understand how someone could go down this rabbit hole if you're just in this world.
Yeah, just scared. It's like everyone was scared of their own shadow. Like you couldn't go to like a restaurant without having a mask and a card saying that you got a shot. Like, and even then it was like still people look at you like, are you going to give me the COVID?
Yeah. It's just you could just, the fear was like palpable. You go to a place, Portland was the same. San Francisco was the same. Los Angeles was the same. Like every time I go to the West Coast, it was just totally different. And then you go, to like Montana. No,
it didn't exist.
Montana. Yeah. Like totally different world. Montana's not that far from Seattle, but it could have been on different sides of the earth.
Yeah.
At what point do you wrap the company up?
There was a lot of different things. Like I got snowballed like on it was a lot of different things besides just COVID coming. Like I got COVID super bad. It almost killed me. Like I remember that. Yeah. My neighbor was coming over. He wouldn't come inside the house, but he was just like, I remember not getting out of my bed for almost a week and a half. And like, then before that, like I drive down to the ER and they're like, oh, you're not in the demographic of like, we can help you. So they get my like vitals back up and send you home. And I remember like almost passing out, going home. And then you like, start feeling like you're about dead again and go like get yourself down there. But it was bad. It was a scary time in my life to, try to navigate by myself. It was just me and my house up on the hill.
Yeah. You were just kind of on your own.
Yeah, it was, but then, so COVID hit and then, this is when Rhino was growing and, like I say, you learn from your mistakes. And I always put a lot of trust in my employees. Like you can't grow a company the way I did without, handing the reins to someone. Because a lot of companies you'll hear like, oh, this guy micromanaging to death and you'll never see the company grow. So you have to give the reins up to, guys to grow and grow healthy, I guess, as a company. Mm-hmm. And that's when, I got an operations manager and then, we started hiring other crew, started doing public works projects. And, you think you vet someone like, I called all former employers, spent like 3-4 months, like interviewing this guy just like back and forth. And, it was, just a tough, I thought it was a great fit and, I come to find out like things get going. It's, we go take a $12 million public works job that, it's a pretty good sized road project. Yeah. We're not a road contractor, we're doing commercial stuff and then, guarantee me everything's in there and start going through the bid and you're like, oh, we're missing stuff. And then they start hiding stuff, like hiding invoices and we're getting people calling me at, 9:00 at night. Hey, you haven't paid this invoice. I'm like, what invoice? And my controller not knowing about it. Uh-huh. And then, then it starts coming out that he's starting his own company and, so then you're dealing with, him not carrying and using like his guys on his own projects, instead of like worrying about my company. And then I start getting sued on some other projects because you can only manage, as I've learned at your seminars that, you can only manage so many people. So, you got to have your managers underneath you. But if you're not getting good reporting from your managers, then it's, if they're telling you everything, the grass is green on the other side of the fence, you're thinking it's green. Mm-hmm. That's what my problem was. I had one client that it was a $5 million project, which was no problem for us, but it was, were just falling on our face on that. And, I had no idea. And so, we started getting sued by that. And and then we had our counterclaims, and, it was just tough. It was a tough time in life. And then, I was going through a little custody battle too for my kid and a 1-year-old. So I'm taking care of a 1-year-old, full time. And
yeah, you kind of had it like all at once. Like when it rains, it pours. It was pouring in your neighborhood.
It was a dark time in life. It was hard to wake up and smile because I remember those times of like, you get up early, work, get him to, his preschool at 7, and then, you had to pick him up by 5, and then you're playing dad till he falls asleep, and then you go back to work until you pass out again. And, it was, that alone was just tough.
Yeah. It's interesting though, too. Like the mental health stuff, I think a lot about, and I've thought a lot about it specifically over the past few weeks. My, I've had anxiety that's just ebbed and flowed, and I've tried to figure it out, but over the past few weeks, it's been just fucking brutal.
Yeah.
But the reality is the world doesn't care and stop for you. And so you just like every day want to curl up in a ball and just not do anything.
Oh yeah.
But
you have to.
You have to.
Yeah.
And then I've thought, you try to just, but then you also kind of have to act like everything's just fine.
Yeah. You got to wear a smile.
And it's terrifying because like at face value, it's actually quite easy to fake it.
Yep.
And I think if you know somebody, you know something's going on.
Yep.
But at face value, you can pretty easily act like everything's fine. How are you? I'm great today. Meanwhile, you're not at all great. And I'm not even like, I'm in a rough place for me right now, but it's like, I couldn't even imagine my wife was wife last week asked for a divorce.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here now living in a hotel. Yeah. My 3 kids are back at home. I don't know what the fuck's going to go on. But then next day, you've just got to go to work.
Yeah. You got to pretend like it never happened.
Dude, it's so brutal. And then it's like, where's the line? Because that's why I have a problem with a lot of the talk about mental health professionally in general.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it's complete bullshit.
Yeah.
I don't think these companies really care.
No.
They because if they did, they'd be doing things about it, but there's not a whole lot. I don't know. I'm a little jaded on the subject. I think it's really important, but it's like, oh, but it's good. Everybody's talking about it. But is that good? Like, does that mean there's difference being made? I don't know.
Yeah.
Because like suicides have never been higher. Drug overdose has never been higher.
Oh yeah.
So is there a difference? I don't know. I'm not sure.
And that's honestly why I came, my wife now I was dating her at the time, and I just woke up one day and I'm like, I can't do it. I'm done. Mm-hmm. And that was my decision. I'm done. I'm shutting this thing down. It's, because I just looked at the benefits. Like, you got 5 things just attacking you from every angle, and you're just like, why do you do this every day? Why? Like, I could go, work for someone and make, money, go home after my 10-hour days.
Yeah.
And
not have.
Yeah. And not like literally every time I turned, it was like, oh, here's a lawsuit. Oh, how do we finish this project now? How do we, like, it was just all collapsed. And like, you just feel like, oh, I can't swim. And, and I talked to you numerous times, like, because I think you were almost doing welfare checks on me to make sure I was.
I knew you were in a really shitty spot, and I try to just check in because it's.
Yeah, it was definitely a dark time in life, but it was. The mental health is, people don't understand that. Like, I couldn't come to work, like, I was up all night, with a sick kid or something like that. You couldn't come to work and let your employees see that you were down. You had to be a leader. You had to be, in there fighting and in there going again. And, it was tough.
Yeah.
Real tough.
So you shut the company down essentially.
Yeah. It, I'll be honest. I looked at it because I have, 6-7 different companies. And so like, you have to look at what's the best, business is business at the end of the day. And so I found that, that we had some lawsuits that we could have won, but I didn't want to spend another $1 million in attorney fees. And I was like, what cuts my liability? So I'm not here. And so we ended up putting it into a receivership to, kind of, it's not a bankruptcy. A receivership's kind of just, here's the keys to my house, to the courts in Washington. And, I helped the receiver. We shut it down, and, everyone got paid, and it was, cut the liabilities off to my other companies. And it was, I wish I would have done it, sooner than not, drag it out 8-9 months. And it was, the hard part is like I should have, would have, could have, but
Sure.
I didn't. And I looked at selling it too, and I had some bites on it, but the hardest thing was, everyone wanted to stay on for 4 to 5 years. And like, I'm such a passionate person. I could not, something you grew from that is like, here's the keys. Okay. Tell me how to run it now.
Yeah.
And because you're never going to see eye to eye with someone, like it's never going to be, they're going to run it completely different than how you did, or different roles.
And I think people don't understand too, the construction business, like that business revolved around you.
Yeah.
So if you remove you, it probably wouldn't completely fall apart, but it doesn't work nearly as well. So you're buying the business as is, but it only works when you're there doing what you're doing. But then they also want it done their way, and it just...
Oh, yeah. I mean, the people, you motivate the people, you motivate, you are the company. Yeah. I mean, you, as all people, like, gone through as many companies and know as many people in the industry, like, imagine just pulling their main people out. Like, it would just crumble the companies. Mm-hmm. And it was a hard decision.
Yeah. So does that mean like they're able to liquidate stuff?
Yeah.
So you just sell off equipment, pay bills.
Yeah. I left, there was money in the company to pay all the bills. Like I said, it was just pretty much all the liabilities out there pretty much just said, okay, we're done. It's you're no more liability. You settled the liabilities, and, it didn't hurt. I had the quarry, and I have all these other, companies, and it just was all arm length. And
so legally, yeah, you're like, I could fight this, I could win, but I'm going to be in it for another $1 million. So let's just settle.
Yeah, these guys.
What do you want?
One of the ones that operation manager got me into was like, they said I owed them $5 million, and they didn't pay me over. They just stopped paying me because they were a little over their heads taking this job. But they owed me $3 million for work I already did. I paid my suppliers. I did, all that. And $3 million is a lot of money. Yeah. Like I don't care who you are. Like that's not an easy nut. But then you're like, okay, if we keep fighting this, and it's a jury in Washington, like you could look at me and just not like me. And so it's like, oh yeah, it's, guilty or whatever. And so it was just like, I didn't want to chance that, having to write a $5 million check after not already getting paid $3 million. So you're $8 million in the hole.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I'd have to go liquidate everything in my house, go live in our van, ask you for a job.
Yeah. So instead it's like, let's meet in the middle.
Yeah. Let's negotiate everything out, and, it definitely kicking the pride though, it's something you built. It was, it was a definitely dark area there. It was hard to understand it, that I chose being a dad over a business. So it was definitely tough.
Yeah. So, and then you got your kid full time?
Yep.
And you've had your kid full time since then?
Yep.
So as a, single, but 100% of the time?
Yeah. Well, he goes to his mom's every other weekend, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So majority, and then financially supporting.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah. So that in itself is a lot.
Oh yeah.
You don't have any help on that while you're also dealing with all this stuff.
Yeah. My amazing wife now, I mean, my son looks up to him like it's his mom. So it's, she does great helping out with that.
When do you get back? Like, why get back into construction?
I had some clients that just wouldn't, because at that point, like I had the pit, was still doing the pit stuff of just kind of, dinking around out there with the gravel pit. And I had a couple customers, and then I was finishing out the jobs for Rino too. So we didn't just screw the customers, instead of leaving mid thing. And so, after that, it's hard to go, hey, go do this job for me. And you're like, well, I don't want to. Well, no, you're going to go do this job, whether you like it or not. And so how do you say no? And it's, they were good margins. It was, so I kept some good guys around and kind of managed it. But, it's been a year and a half, 2 years, because we started shutting it down in 2022, end of June 2022 is when I started shutting Rino down. And, it talk about mental health. Like it just, kicked me in the dirt for 2 years. Like it was hard to like motivation. Like every time I talked to you, I was just, negative. It was like, that's not me. I'm a positive guy. Here's the issue. Let's figure out how to, get past the issue and keep going. And there I was just like, the issue sucked. It was,
it's I feel like I had a conversation like this the other day. It's so much easier said than done. If you start to spiral down, it's like everybody's like, "Oh, just take a deep breath." Just have a positive outlook. It's like if you're in a hole, you can't just like, "Oh, I'm gonna put on a smile today." Like today's gonna be a great day, and it's all good. Like it's so deep within you. It's so hard to crawl out of.
And it's hard to wake up every day. Like even like you're like, I had this booming company, doing $60 million a year, and now all of a sudden, like, I don't have that anymore, and this is my life. And it was, like, it was tough. Like,
well, because the company it becomes part of your identity too. Yeah. And I've been so guilty of this. How are you? Well, hey, everything's good at work. We're finally figuring stuff out. Like, no. How are you? I'm like, fuck, I did it again, didn't I? Yeah, I it just, you get so wrapped up in it and you pour so much into it.
Yep.
That it's taken away and you lose part of you. Like you lose part of your identity.
Yeah, I just had to, like, one day, like, I finally just, like I said, have an amazing woman on my side to help, but I just woke up and I was like, yeah, you can't just keep being so negative. Can't be like so down on yourself. Just get up and let's go. And then, it's that's just from there. I just kind of keep going every day and having fun. And if I can't, and it's like hitting rock bottom. Like when you start twirling down, you gotta hit the floor before you're gonna get back up. Like there was nothing else. Like it goes back to my 20s. Like, okay, I just shut down this giant company. Like, you're kind of a limbo in life, and it's like, do I go to work for someone? Do I, what do you do? Do I sell everything I still have left? Or, it was just kind of the bottom floor of like, okay, where do you go in life? And so here I am.
There were weeks last year where I'd be sitting in bed rolling through like, all right, if this comes crashing down, if this happens, like, what's my plan B? But then I would try to quickly correct, like, no. Yeah. There's no plan B. Like you're lying to yourself right now. that isn't an option.
Yeah.
You've got to figure this out. But yeah, it's a shitty place to be to start. Like, do I go work for somebody else? What would I do? So on and so forth.
Yeah. But then, like, I came to the conclusion, I'm like, I don't want to work for someone. Like, I've had some great offers from people to go to work for them where I'm like, I'm stupid not to. But I'm like, I like what I'm doing. I like working with people. I love teaching people. It's just a great feeling what I do. But, it's, as I say, like, so many people, you're walking down the road and they say, oh, you're Aaron Buildwit. Like, you own Buildwit. They never say, like, oh, what's that guy go through to have to run Buildwit? And so, like, that's the hard part.
Yeah. And I mean, just it just puts it into perspective, like what everybody's going through too.
Yeah.
Like everybody has shit going on.
Oh yeah.
Everybody. And like when I realized this maybe 2 years ago, like you Thanksgiving on social media, all the families are happy. Everybody's having a great time. But then you realize, like, wait a minute. This is bullshit.
Yeah.
Like a lot of this is complete bullshit.
Yeah.
This is not. Like, I'm starting to go down the path of like, wow, every family's perfect. Everything's like a movie,
Hallmark
movie.
You start believing it.
Yes. And so why isn't mine? Why isn't my life like this? But it's not like that at all. Like, that's not at all reality.
Yep.
Everybody has stuff going on behind the scenes when it comes to family or health, or I don't know what it is. I mean, even like deaths in the family.
Yeah.
People die.
Yeah.
Like that's just a normal thing that happens to everybody.
Yep.
So that's always going on. People are always going through that. Like, even if their life's perfect, finances are perfect, like they just lose their mom.
Yep.
That's a lot. That's a lot to deal with, but it's like, nope, we've got work to do. It's Monday.
Exactly. And that, I'll say I was guilty as that too. It's like, I'm looking at my company, I'm seeing the internals running on it. And then I'm looking at all these other companies like on their, they just look great from that
Companies
side.
too.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you're like, oh my, why is my baby ugly? And theirs is beautiful, and it just screws with you. And you it's like a mental game almost, but it's like, I've had a couple people like, tell me in the dirt industry saying, oh yeah, I've always been, financially stable, that. And I'm like, okay, I know the dirt industry, like anyone that's been in the dirt industry has been broke.
Yeah.
It's a capital intensive industry.
It's completely true. Yeah.
You got clients that don't pay you. Like, it's not that you're broke forever. It's like, oh, this guy didn't pay me $1 million, and then it's like, how do I go find payroll? How do I, go from there? And it'll be fine in, a month or 2 months once you get paid, but there's hard times in every industry, and it goes same to like the guys is, they might have death in the family, a sick kid or something. They're having hard times just like you are. It's just a different scale and different level.
Going through that. So why do people then ask you to do more work? Because you'd think it'd be like, well, this guy radioactive. Yeah. Don't touch him. How does that work out?
Oh, I've got a different mindset. Like I used to care what people think about me. You did an awesome job of like our marketing for the company. I mean, we looked like we were a beautiful baby,
we made you a real professional.
Yeah. We had our issues, and I always kind of, I didn't care exactly like if my trucks were the cleanest run down the road. I'm like, okay, these things are making money. Here we go. But I always kind of cared like what the industry, thought about me. And then, once I shut Rhino down, it was every single person across the industry. He went bankrupt. Mm-hmm. And, I had a guy in my gravel pit the other day, and he's like, hey, who do you rent this pit from? And I'm like, this is my pit. And he's like, who's all this gear out here? Like, is someone backing you? I'm like, no, it's all mine. It's all paid for. And he's like, well, and then like, cause he didn't want my scale gal to hear. So he's like, hey, come out here. And he's like, well, everyone knows you went bankrupt at Rhino. And I said, if I went bankrupt, I would not have a personal asset out here. And I said, so believe what you want. But, 2 years ago, that would put me in like a mental tailspin. And now I just laugh about it. And, and the clients know I can go out there, produce,
Yeah. I guess I went through a similar realization over the past few years. I was just caught up in how stuff looked. Yeah. Like even, like this office, it's really stupid. It's like, we don't really fucking need this.
It's a great office.
It's a great office. We're in it now. Like, we've got a lease. It is what it is. But I cared so much about it because I wanted to look legitimate. Now it's like, it doesn't matter in the slightest. All that matters is solving problems, doing good work, getting paid. Yeah. Developing our people. That's all that matters.
You'd be running out of a Motel 6, and it's.
Yeah, I've like all that stuff's not as interesting to me anymore. How stuff looks, because I've realized that doesn't really contribute to the fundamentals. Yeah, and so now it's all fundamentals. Yep. If the fundamentals don't work, it's just not interesting to me.
And when that clicked for me is I started seeing us more successful. Like once you're not worried about everything else, what people think about you with that, like you just don't, like I've always kind of not cared. I mean, I remember the first time I met you, you came into my office, my old office down there, and you're like, I'm gonna be honest, this is probably like one of the worst offices. Like the inside was nice, but the outside, he's like, this place is kind of rough. And I was like, hey, we're running
rough, but your office wasn't the tidiest.
Yeah. Yes, I'll be the first one to admit that.
There was a lot going on.
Yeah, it was controlled chaos in there. I knew every piece of paper where it was on that desk, but
man, it was thick.
It was. But, and I still get a hard time for that. Like it's my wife looks at me and she goes, how do you literally remember all this stuff in your head, where it is, what paper, like over there? I'm like, I have no idea. But yes, but it goes back to that where like I didn't really I probably should have worried a little bit more about the, the aesthetics about that. But, we were still getting tons of work. We were performing work great at this point. Yeah. And it was.
No, it looked legit. And it was legit.
But that's when, like, after shutting that company down and then, like, kind of coming back, everyone like, pinning me in the corner, like, oh, you went bankrupt, you did this. And all the guys around me know, like, because it was funny, the Ritchie brothers rep, because I started selling a bunch of the gear in 2022 when all the prices were way up. Mm-hmm. And everyone's like, they were advertising Rino Construction sales. We did 3 big sales with them.
Yeah.
And, they were advertising like with our logo and everything. And so everyone's like, oh, okay, the Grim Reapers here, the Ritchie brothers, they're selling everything. So everyone's calling, like he's telling me, he's like, I probably got 40 calls this week of people like, did they go under? What happened with that? And, he would just laugh. He's like, we wrote Jason a check, like one of the biggest checks like Ritchie's wrote out of this yard because he sold so much gear here. Like we see all the back end stuff. He's doing fine. Okay.
Yeah.
But, and then everywhere else in the industry, oh, he's bankrupt.
It's funny though, in this world, people talk.
Oh yeah.
People talk. And it's no different than like a second grade classroom or like the playground. It's hilarious. It's a bunch of grown men, but it's just gossip. And it's just, I try to avoid it now. It sucks me in every once in a while, but I've gotten pretty good at it because I don't want to be that guy gossiping, talking any kind of shit, this or that.
Yeah.
It's not a good look, but man, people, they love stuff like that.
Oh, and that's, like I said, it when you hit rock bottom, like when everyone thinks you went bankrupt, there's not much more that can, kick a guy in the nuts than that. Like and when the entire industry is like, that's what everyone thinks. And then that's where I really learned to just put the noise aside. Like it was, 2 years ago would have sent me to tailspin. Now I just laugh it off. But, when you're not worried about what everyone's thinking, like your brain thinks so much clearer. You just...
Well, and usually it's not the people that matter.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, the entire clients, because we were one of the biggest dirt guys up there. And then one day big deal. Yeah. One day we just, are gone. And so it affected like everything, like, people still talk about it, and it really, once I learned how to get, set aside, the noise of like what people think or what this and whatnot, it hasn't been so easy to be successful. Like it's clear path. Like you're focused. You don't care what, oh cool, you think I went bankrupt, move out of my way. I'm going to go to work.
Yeah. How old are you now?
36.
36. So that's also something I've been thinking about is, like I've been realizing like, I had a really flawed, I've just done some dumb shit. Just fucking stupid stuff. And I'm turning 30 in February. So I feel like, and we finished fundraising in May, and that was just hell for years. And it was so consuming. I'm out of that now, coming up on 30. So now I'm like taking inventory, like, all right, what didn't go well before I go into my 30s, what do I want to do, et cetera. Which I don't think is that unusual. But I've done a lot of dumb shit. I've been thinking about a lot of it recently, and you beat yourself up over it. Oh yeah. Like there's a lot of shame. You're just like, how could I be so fucking dumb? And in some of the stuff, you got like the regret that comes in. But then another side of it is, thank God I'm learning this right now.
Yeah.
I'm not even 30 yet. I just learned this lesson. That is one of the best life lessons I could possibly learn. And I'm going to have that the rest of my life.
Yep.
Like, and then I frame it in that way. I'm like, it doesn't necessarily calm me down. Like, I still wake up anxious, but there's just so much value in that. And I'm so grateful at the same time.
A lot of people don't look at it that way though.
No.
A lot of people look at it in a dark sense of like, you should be getting a pat on the back. You're trying. Not a lot of people have the balls to go out and say, hey, I'm going to go do this. And instead of like people trying to lift you up, it's, he's going to fail or he's going bankrupt or he's, whatever it is. And I'm sure you dealt with that, in your upbringing, but there's so many more people that want to hold you down that just fog your head up than they do, so what if you fail? You learn more. Like I told people I could have went to Harvard probably 6 or 7 times with the lessons I've learned, like money wise. Like, 100%. Don't do that again.
Yeah. And but then you learn like these fundamental money lessons. It's like, okay, wow, I really now understand how a dollar works.
Yeah.
And now I've got that. Like I don't have to learn that again.
Yep.
I've got it. I'm going to hold on to it now.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of people don't see it that way.
Yeah. It's weird how I think social media has a lot to do with, how people look at other people. And like, you also know me, how I don't usually dress the best. Like you find me on a Monday through Friday out on a job site, I'm covered in mud and look like the labor on the site. And, it's, I had one guy, like, some random guy, like I had a Rhino shirt on, and the guy comes up to me and he's just talking like, oh, Jason, that owner's an asshole, like this, that, and the other. And he doesn't realize I'm Jason. So I let him go on. I'm like, yeah, he's tough to work for, this, and the other. And yeah, he went bankrupt. He screwed so many people. And so I let him just finish of just, trashing me. And I'm just sitting here like egging him on almost. And so I look at him and I go, well, hey, if you think I screwed someone or owe someone money, I said, have them contact me. I'll be more than happy to make it right. I'm not here to screw people. And he's like, oh, you're Jason. Like it clicked, and he just felt like the biggest idiot ever. Yeah. He's like, oh, you're a pretty cool guy. Sorry, I didn't know you. I just what I heard from you. Yeah. And it goes back to social media. Like, someone puts a post like Rino Construction went bankrupt. And then, the next guy, Rino Construction went bankrupt, and adds something to it. And then it keeps going down the line. And then now you're that poster child of like what everything went wrong.
Social media is funny in that regard too, because when someone will make some shithead comment, and I'll respond to them, and they won't even expect me to respond. Yeah. And then when I respond, oh, hey man, actually I didn't mean that. Love what you guys do, so on and so forth. Yeah. It's almost like 9 out of 10 times, it's always positive after that. And I'm like, yeah, you were being an asshole. Yeah. Now you recognize you're being an asshole.
For no reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's exactly what I mean. It's just like you let them, but that negativity, like a lot of entrepreneurs, is like, I couldn't say it enough. Like you got to find a way to cloud that negativity, because no matter if you're successful, they're going to talk about you. If you're not successful, they're not going to talk about you. So it's
yeah. You almost have to reframe it. Like, hey, the more shit that's being talked, the more progress I'm making in a way.
Yep. But to get that mentality is so hard, is because you're already, you're trying to climb 3 mountains trying to build a business. Yeah. And then now you got the negativity on your back of like, oh, everyone just. I fought that from being a young business owner, starting at 22 and taking on a market like Seattle was not an easy fight.
In my world, it's been interesting because my whole business and life has been on social media for 7 years. Yeah. And so, the stuff you hear and what people think is quite funny, because it's like, but that's also been the way I've guarded against it in a lot of ways. Like I haven't actually had that much because I've been so consistent. Yeah, which means I'm genuine, because you can't be that consistent without being truly genuine. And I'll call myself an asshole first. like, you don't know what you're talking about. It's like, yeah, you're right. I've already said that 100 times over. This is not new information. I've never claimed I know what I'm talking about. Yep. And so you can. I've almost used social as a tool in that regard too. Like, yeah, here's the reality. Did we almost run out of money multiple times last year? Yeah, we did. Yeah. And here's what we fucking learned from that. And here's why we're better than ever before because of it. And I don't ever want to go back there again. Yep. And I talked to somebody last week. She was interviewing for a position here, and she said, yeah, I saw that post, and that's a company I really want to work for. Yeah. And, but there's a lot of fear in even sharing something like that, because it's like
it takes balls.
If I share something like that, no one's ever going to want to work for me. Are you kidding me? Like they want security, safety. They have a family to support. But then it's the funniest thing. It actually says, oh wow, they won't bullshit me. Yep. It's an honest place run by honest people. But yeah, it doesn't make it any less scary. Yeah, to talk about that kind of stuff.
But to preach that it's okay to say that you failed. Like everyone thinks you got to paint this, like going back to it, everything's got to be roses and unicorns. No business is roses and unicorns. Like you gotta be okay with the bad times to get the good times. You can't just hide the bad times and pretend like they didn't happen.
Yeah, it's Yeah, it's easier said than done.
Yeah, 100%. We could both sit here and smile about it, and it's a tough battle.
I'm really happy with where you're at, though. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I still got to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. I'm back to the hard spot as people. We're doing zero advertising. I don't have a single logo on any equipment. Like our pit's just taking off like crazy, selling rock, and but then now I'm starting to get more phone calls. Like I probably turned down a little over $20 million worth of work this year of just, old clients saying like, hey, I hear you're doing work again. You want to come do this? Hey, you want to do this? And, I'm starting to get old employees like, hey, can I come back? You're the best boss I ever had, and it's just, that kind of stuff really, lightens the soul.
And in business too, I feel like you can, if you do the right, you can't make the mistake because you do the right thing.
Yeah.
That other people are going to do the right thing.
Yep.
That is not how the world works. A lot of people don't do the right thing. But if you don't let that corrode your sense of what's right and wrong,
yep,
it does work itself out at some point.
100%.
Like they're the people that go down the, wait, business is just about screwing people and taking advantage. Like you go down that, I've never seen it work out for somebody at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But the people that, regardless of how corrosive it gets, just say, hey, here's what's right. Here's what's wrong. I'm staying on the right side no matter what I've got to do. Again, it's easier said than done. Like that seems so simple. Yep. It's not that simple. The doing the right thing is way harder than doing the wrong thing most of the time. but it pans out.
Yep. And that's, it takes one less weight off your shoulder too, because doing the right thing, you don't have that extra weight of like, because your brain's still going to know you did the wrong thing. And it's going to beat you up inside, even though you don't think it is. It's going to be one more weight on your shoulder. And that's exactly what you're saying. Is I've learned that, like, you got to, when we were shutting Rhino down, I owed you that money. I called you and said, hey, I owe you this money. And you said, when you were doing all our marketing, I was the first one to say, hey, I owe you money. Let me know what I owe you. And like, I don't have access to the books. I'll pay you. And you said, no, it's more kind of, I remember the conversation of like, hey, you're calling me trying to make it right. You're in a dark spot. Like, don't worry about me. I'll be fine. But, that was kind of just the closure of like, hey, I got to get off my chest. You're a great guy. I still remember, like, I laughed one day, back when Rhino was running, I just run around crazy. I get the mail on my desk and here's a handwritten, happy birthday card from you. Like, hey, it's your birthday, and you're like, this dude's trying to grow his company, but he has, it's just kind of a cool feeling, like, and you remember stuff like that. And so it's like, what, I'm not here to screw anyone, and I'm trying to make my rights right.
And I also get it too. Yeah. Like, that's why I'm glad I was raised by a lawyer, because I got to see the tricks of lawyers. And so it's like, you should go sue these guys that screw you over. It's like, what would that achieve?
Their billing rate goes.
like what does that get me? More stress, more spending for maybe a moral victory at the end of the day, maybe a financial victory, maybe.
Yep.
But it's just like, why? And then, we've been burned plenty of times over. But then it's like,
anyone in business has.
Yeah, but I just kind of categorize it like, ooh, look out for, there's a snake in the grass right over there.
Yep.
And maybe we do business again, but I'm always going to know it's a snake in the grass, and I'm going to keep him at an arm's length. But you just showed your hand, snake in the grass. Cool. Know you're there now. And so that's how I approach it, is I'm under no impressions that everybody's a good guy. But then, that said, there's a lot of really good people in this world.
There are tons.
And that's why I feel like I've gravitated, once I found construction, blue collar America, it's all I want. Yep. Because I go into these other worlds like real estate or finance, and it's just legal. Yeah. It's just icky. Like it doesn't feel, it's like I've got to go shower after being in the room with these people. And not that they're all bad, but it's just, it doesn't
feel right.
It doesn't feel nearly as good as just being on a job site with people that work for a living.
Yep. I got to say, I was when I was, starting to just take on any client and, people wouldn't pay us, when you're 23, 24, just, you got to win mentality. Like I remember I hired a CFO to come in and, and she goes, I've done a lot of companies this size. I've never seen anyone spend so much money on legal fees. And I said, well, at the time, you're young and you're like, well, I got to win. It's proven right.
Yeah, I
got to prove. I don't want to be wrong in this situation. And, going back and looking at now, like what I've learned from the millions of dollars I spent in legal fees probably over the last, 15 years, you could walk in the room and say, hey, let's sit down. Let's work this out without lawyers. And okay, I'm going to take a bath on some that you might take a bath, but hey, we're still going to walk out, shake hands and, problem solved. Let's keep going. Mm-hmm. Not the, hey, screw you. And, we're going to just go into court until the lawyers buy a new vacation house,
Yeah, they're the only ones that win.
Oh, yeah.
It's like Vegas. The house always wins.
Yeah.
Say a 22-year-old kid now starting a construction company asks you, what's your best advice?
Oh, that's a tough. It goes back to you learn so much in this thing, but best advice is, equipment, your capital is so expensive is don't go out in the debt. Like that will sink you so fast. You can't, and we're seeing that right now in Washington, a lot of owner operators, younger kids. And I have lots of guys that work for me that, starting their own thing, and I help them out. Like I give them advice or, like, hey, use my piece of equipment or whatever. But it's starting to slow down the economy up there a little bit, and the smaller projects, and these guys got themselves maxed out like on their dump trucks and their equipment that like they're used to working 60 hours a week, and now you might work 3 weeks out of this month instead of that, and now it's starting to catch up to everyone. Yeah. I'm like, it's just a hard lesson to learn, but until you kind of get the rug pulled out from underneath you, it's been good for too long, and so people don't know what the bad times are like.
Yeah, and that. I also, it's been kind of odd too. I've been talking with a lot of contractors, and they're like, it seems like it might be getting slower. It hasn't really gotten slower yet, but everybody's like, there's like an unease in the marketplace. I'd say
the
right
volumes aren't there.
Yeah. And it depends on the market, but they're like, we're still plenty busy. Like I'm not looking for more work right now, but maybe in the future it wouldn't be as much. But then the other side of it is like, the market's been so irrational post 2020 that even people that have lived through multiple cycles in a lot of ways have just forgotten that this is not a normal market.
No,
like none of this is normal, and so it getting dialed back isn't a bad thing. Like it can't. Everybody knows it can't stay like this.
Yep.
And so, like, why is it a bad thing if we were to retract a little bit? And I know that's taboo. It always has to be grow. But I feel like people have forgotten that the market has been so wild over the past few years.
It's got to humble people up a little bit.
Yeah. It's like, this isn't sustainable. This isn't good for anybody. It's like we're a bunch of drug addicts.
Yeah. And I mean, we see it huge up in Washington because in the winters, the erosion is so expensive. And so it used to be, back when we were rocking 2011, 12, you planned on sitting in the winter, and the guys knew that you sat in the winter, you made your money in the summer. But since literally 2013 to now, like the clients paid, like we don't care, push through Baker tanks, like we don't care about water, get it out, we'll pay you to deal with it. And now it's kind of come back to reality a little bit of like, hey, we don't want to pay this extra money, or and so we're starting to see it that way. But it's not the guy that has 20 pieces of equipment that's failing. It's the poor kids that, like I was one time, that, hey, I'm gonna go buy this piece of equipment and succeed, but then it's been good for so long, they're buying a brand new piece of equipment instead of buying the used one, learn how to fix on it. They're buying brand new pickups. They're going and buying this big house, and they just got themselves leveraged so far that, like, I got a couple guys that I kind of mentor and talk with, and I'm telling them, like, dude, your equipment's not worth what you bought it for now. The used equipment market's in the gutter compared to what it was, and trying to get them to get that mindset of like, I gotta get out of debt, and otherwise, you have a bad month, it's going to sink you faster.
I always get a little nervous too when I see like younger businesses and they're taking money out of the business.
Yeah.
That makes me nervous. I'm like, dude, I hope you know what you're doing. Yeah. Like, that's a nice house and your business is not like that mature.
Yeah.
And I know you're doing well right now, but and maybe they're right. I don't know. I'm not the expert here, but it makes me nervous.
But I mean, go talk to these, giant companies that you work around it, and go ask the owner if he started from day one. He'd be like, usually like, I struggled for the first 5 years. Like I didn't pull money out. Like I remember when I did, it was every penny I got went back in the company to grow it. It was not, I'm going to go buy a boat or, this or that. It was how do I make more money to grow the company? Yeah. And it's everyone I talk to and that has the same aspect, unless, they have funding or something coming back in them. But a lot of guys, like, just starting from scratch, or every penny counts. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad this worked out. I'm glad we were able to sit down and talk finally.
Yeah, it's been quite a few years.
Well, I feel like we tried it in 21, but I'm glad we did it now. Because I feel like there's more to talk about now than there was in 21.
Yeah, there definitely was,
or whenever it was. Like we were just been talking about how good life is.
Yeah. You can't be ashamed of the bad stuff. Like I look at it as like, yeah, even like I failed. Like I wouldn't say I failed. I don't beat myself up over it on Rhino, but I learned so many valuable lessons. But it's better than me just going and collecting a paycheck. I still tried it. Even if someone's going to, even if you, I did, like, you failed, you at least have the, the pat on the back. I tried it.
But I feel like people that can say that, it proves in a way that they've learned from it.
Oh yeah.
And they're better for it as a result. Like if they can't admit that, that's when you have to watch out.
Yeah. You can't be afraid to fail.
No. And I was excited to talk to you too, because I feel like this is a message a lot of people need to hear.
Yeah.
Like I didn't realize that. Even the post the other day about even just payroll. It was like, I've got nothing to offer you.
Yeah.
Other than been there, fucking sucks. But that's enough to a lot of people. Like to know, wow. So I'm not the only one struggling with this.
Yeah.
I'm not the only one that's been through this. I'm not a complete fuck up. I'm not a failure.
Yeah.
Like there's other people out here in the same fight. Okay. Like sometimes that's all you need to keep going.
Yeah. That little bit of like kind of, the pick you up you need to keep you from spiraling down. It's like, because like you say, it's hard to wake up every morning with a smile on your face. And
man, yeah, even like it's Friday right now, and I just know it's like I don't have anything planned Saturday, Sunday, and so it's like idle minds, devil's playground.
Yeah.
So what am I gonna go do? It's just not a fun place to be.
Yep, and that's like I just got married in June. My wife's already hounding me like you can't just sit still. Like we'll be. Spend some time with the family or something. Saturday, I'll be like, I gotta go to the pit. I'm going to go build this crusher, or tear this thing down, or you know what it is. And she goes, well, why do you go out there and like work? And I'm like, because if not, I'm going to go find a way how to build a company or do something that like right now I just I'm kind of on like retirement mode right now. But if not, it's going to, my brain's just going to keep going.
Out somehow.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well,
Thanks for having me in here.
Yeah.
We've talked about it.
We've talked about it a long time. Yeah. Appreciate you sharing.